I was sitting in that row of graduates wearing my cap and gown, heart pounding with pride. This was the day I had waited for 6 long years, the day I would prove I had survived it all. When they called my name, I stood up and walked toward the stage. My eyes drifted to the very back row of the audience, and I saw a face that should have been 3 feet underground for 4 years. My legs stopped. The world stopped spinning around me. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. My brother died 4 years ago. I stood beside his casket. I cried until I had no tears left. So why was he sitting there today looking at me with the eyes of a living man? Stay with me. My name is Malcolm, and I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street, a 2-story brick home with a basketball hoop in the driveway and a backyard where my brother and I spent countless summer afternoons. My father worked as a plumber, the kind of man who came home with grease under his fingernails and pride in his chest for providing for his family. My mother was a night shift nurse at the local hospital, often leaving for work, just as we sat down for dinner and returning when the morning light crept through our curtains. My brother Derek was 5 years older than me. Growing up, he was everything I wanted to be. He made the varsity basketball team as a sophomore, something nobody in our school had done in over a decade. His grades were always on the honor roll. Teachers loved him. Girls noticed him. Our parents talked about him like he was destined for greatness. And maybe he was. I lived in his shadow, but honestly, I did not mind it back then. Derek never made me feel small. When kids at school picked on me for being skinny and quiet, Derek showed up after class and suddenly those kids found somewhere else to be. He taught me how to ride a bike in our driveway, running beside me with his hand on the seat until I found my balance. Every Saturday night we would stay up late playing video games in his room, the glow of the television the only light while our parents slept down the hall. I looked up to him more than I ever told him. He was my brother, my protector, my blueprint for the kind of man I wanted to become. Derek got a full athletic scholarship to a university in Cleveland. The day he left for college, I stood in the driveway and watched our father load boxes into the back of the truck. Derek hugged me and said he would call every week. And, for a while, he did. After graduation, Derek landed a job at a financial consulting firm downtown Cleveland. The starting salary was more than our father made in a year. Within 6 months, Derek bought a new car, a silver sedan that gleamed in photographs he sent to our family group chat. He rented an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He sent money home every month, helping our parents pay off their mortgage faster than they ever dreamed. Everything seemed perfect. Everything seemed like Derek was living the life he was supposed to live. But then, things started changing. The weekly calls became monthly. Then, they stopped altogether unless our mother called first. Derek missed Thanksgiving that year, saying work was too demanding. He missed Christmas, too. Our mother cried in the kitchen that night, though she tried to hide it from me. I was 18 then, just graduated from high school, trying to figure out what came next for my own life. One weekend, I decided to drive up to Cleveland to surprise Derek. I had saved up money from my part-time job at the grocery store and thought maybe we could grab dinner, catch up like old times. When I knocked on his apartment door, the man who answered barely looked like my brother. Derek had lost weight, maybe 20 pounds. His cheekbones jutted out from his face like ridges. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes like bruises. The apartment behind him was a mess. Clothes on the floor, dishes piled in the sink, empty takeout containers stacked on the coffee table. I asked him if everything was okay. He laughed it off, said work had been brutal, said he was just tired. He took me out to dinner at a nice restaurant, paid for everything, and by the end of the night, I'd almost convinced myself that I was worried over nothing. I was wrong. It was a cold November night when we got the call. I remember because I was sitting at the kitchen table working on college applications when our home phone rang. My mother answered. I watched her face change. I watched the color drain from her cheeks. I watched her legs give out as she collapsed onto the kitchen floor, the phone clattering beside her. Derek was dead. The police said it was a car accident on Interstate 71. His silver sedan had crashed through a guardrail and plunged into the Cuyahoga River. By the time rescue teams reached the vehicle, it was engulfed in flames. The body inside was burned beyond recognition. They identified Derek through dental records and a few personal items recovered from the wreckage: his wallet, his company badge, his class ring from high school. The funeral was held on a gray afternoon. Rain fell so hard it sounded like static. We gathered around a closed casket because there was nothing left to see. My mother sobbed so violently that two of my aunts had to hold her upright. My father stood like a statue, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. He did not say a single word for 3 days after that. I stood beside my brother's grave and made him a promise. I told him I would make something of myself. I told him I would take care of our parents. I told him I would live enough for both of us. I had no idea what that promise would cost me. The months after Derek's funeral revealed truths that his death had kept hidden. Creditors started calling our house. Letters arrived demanding payment for debts none of us knew existed. Slowly, piece by piece, the full picture emerged. Derek had been gambling. Not just casually, not just for fun, but obsessively. Online poker, sports betting, underground card games. He had won at first enough to make him believe he had found a shortcut to wealth. But gambling does not work that way. The house always wins eventually. By the time of his death, Derek owed more than $80,000. Some of it was to legitimate lending institutions. Credit cards maxed out. Personal loans taken under false pretenses. But a significant portion was owed to people who did not send polite letters or make phone calls during business hours. Loan sharks. Men who charged interest rates that doubled debts within months. My parents had co-signed some of his loans without fully understanding what they were agreeing to. They were legally responsible for tens of thousands of dollars that Derek had gambled away. To pay the debts, my parents sold our house on Maple Street, the home where I learned to walk, the backyard where Derek and I played catch, the driveway where he taught me to ride a bike. Gone. Sold to strangers who probably repainted the walls and tore out our mother's garden without a second thought. We moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, neighbors who argued at 3 in the morning. The financial strain cracked my parents' marriage wide open. My father blamed my mother for spoiling Derek for never disciplining him for raising a son who ran from his problems instead of facing them. My mother blamed my father for being absent for working so many hours that he never noticed Derek was drowning. They screamed at each other in that small apartment words like weapons wounds that would never fully heal. 1 year after Derek's funeral, my parents signed divorce papers. My father moved to Arizona to live with his sister. He called me once a month at first, then every few months, then barely at all. The last time I spoke to him was a 5-minute phone call on my 20th birthday. He sounded like a stranger. My mother fell apart in slow motion. Depression wrapped around her like a fog that would not lift. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating regular meals, stopped caring about the things that used to bring her joy. She lost her job at the hospital because she could not focus, kept making mistakes, broke down crying during a shift, and could not stop. I was 19 years old, enrolled in community college part-time, and suddenly I was the only thing holding our small family together. I worked 3 jobs. Mornings at a coffee shop near campus pouring lattes for people rushing to their offices. Afternoons stocking shelves at a warehouse store lifting boxes until my back screamed. Nights delivering pizza across the city, driving through rain and snow to earn tips that sometimes amounted to less than minimum wage. Every dollar I made went to rent, utilities, groceries, and my mother's medication. She needed antidepressants just to get out of bed. She needed therapy sessions twice a week just to function. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. I watched my grades slip. There were semesters I had to drop classes because I could not attend lectures while working 50 hours a week. There were nights I came home at 2 in the morning so exhausted I could barely climb the stairs, only to find my mother sitting in the dark living room clutching a photograph of Derek and crying softly. I never blamed her. How could I? She had lost her son. She had lost her husband. She had lost her home and her career and her sense of safety in the world. The mother who raised me with warmth and laughter had become a ghost of herself, and I was the only one left to help her find her way back. Some nights I wanted to quit. I wanted to walk away from all of it. The pressure felt like a physical weight on my chest, crushing me slowly. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered the promise I made at Derek's grave. I told him I would take care of our parents. I meant it. So I kept going. One day at a time. One shift at a time. One tuition payment at a time. It took me 6 years to finish a degree that should have taken 4. I transferred from community college to Ohio State after 3 years of accumulating credits. I chose accounting because it seemed practical, stable, the kind of career that would never leave me desperate for money the way my family had been. Those 6 years blurred together into a haze of alarm clocks and coffee and textbooks and time cards. I did not date. I did not party. I did not have the luxury of being a normal college student. My early 20s were spent in survival mode, grinding through each day just to reach the next one. When I received the letter confirming I had met all requirements for graduation, I sat alone in my tiny apartment and cried. Not from sadness this time. From relief, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming realization that I had actually done it. That was the first time I cried in 4 years. Graduation day arrived on a Saturday in May. The weather was perfect. Blue sky, warm sunshine. A gentle breeze that carried the scent of fresh-cut grass across the stadium where the ceremony was held. My mother came to watch. She wore a navy blue dress she had bought specifically for this occasion, the first new clothing she had purchased for herself in years. When I saw her in the audience before the ceremony began, she was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile I had not seen on her face since before Derek died. That smile made everything worth it. Every sleepless night. Every aching muscle. Every moment I wanted to give up but did not. I sat among hundreds of other graduates wearing my black cap and gown, waiting for my name to be called. Around me, students chatted excitedly with their friends, took selfies, made plans for after-parties. I sat quietly thinking about how long this road had been and how far I had come. When they announced my name, I stood up. My legs felt unsteady beneath me, not from nervousness but from the sheer magnitude of the moment. I walked toward the stage, each step bringing me closer to the diploma that represented 6 years of sacrifice. That is when it happened. My eyes wandered to the back of the audience, just a casual glance across the sea of faces. And there, in the very last row, half hidden beneath the shadow of the upper deck, I saw him. A man wearing a dark baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses covering his eyes. But I knew that posture. I knew the way he tilted his head slightly to the right when he was watching something carefully. I knew the shape of his jaw, the breadth of his shoulders, the way he crossed his arms over his chest. It was Derek. My legs stopped moving. I stood frozen in the middle of the aisle while hundreds of people watched. Someone behind me whispered, asking if I was okay. I heard laughter from somewhere in the crowd, probably thinking I was overwhelmed with emotion. I was overwhelmed, but not with the emotion they imagined. I forced myself to keep walking. I climbed the stairs. I shook hands with the dean. I accepted my diploma. The whole time, my eyes kept drifting back to that figure in the last row. He had not moved. He was still watching. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. I do not remember a single speech or a single song. All I could think about was the impossibility sitting in that back row. When the ceremony ended, I found my mother in the crowd. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe, tears streaming down her face as she told me how proud she was. I hugged her back and told her I needed to find someone. I asked her to wait by the main entrance. I promised I would explain later. I pushed through the crowd toward the back of the stadium. People moved too slowly. Every second felt like an hour. When I finally reached the last row, it was empty. He was gone. No, I would not let him disappear again. I ran toward the parking lot, my graduation gown billowing behind me. I scanned every row of cars, every sidewalk, every face, and then I saw him, walking quickly toward a gray pickup truck parked at the far end of the lot. I called his name, Derek. He stopped. His shoulders tensed. For a long moment he did not turn around. Then, slowly, he faced me. He removed his sunglasses, and I looked into the eyes of my dead brother. He had aged. His face was thinner, harder lined with years I had not been present for. A beard covered his jaw, something he never wore before. But those eyes were the same. Dark brown, just like mine. He spoke first. His voice was hoarse, like he had not used it much lately. "Malcolm," he said, "you got so grown up. I'm proud of you." I could not respond. My mouth would not form words. The brother I buried 4 years ago was standing in front of me alive, breathing, looking at me like this was some kind of normal reunion. He explained everything. Standing there in that parking lot with the sounds of graduation celebrations echoing around us, Derek told me what he had done. The gambling debts had become too dangerous. The loan sharks were threatening more than just financial ruin. They wanted to hurt him. They wanted to send a message. So Derek made a choice. He found a body at a morgue, someone unclaimed who roughly matched his size. He bribed the right people. He staged the accident. He burned the evidence. And then he disappeared. He moved to Portland. New name, new identity, cash jobs in construction where nobody asked questions. 4 years of hiding, of looking over his shoulder, of pretending to be someone else. He said he came back because he could not miss my graduation. He said he had been watching from a distance, keeping track of my progress. He said he was proud of the man I had become. And then he asked me the question that shattered whatever numbness I had been feeling. "I know I made mistakes," he said. "But it is over now. Those people stopped looking for me years ago. I want to come home. Can we start over?" I stared at him. I felt the words rising in my throat like bile. "Do you know what happened after you died?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Too quiet. He shook his head. So I told him. I told him about the debts that came due, about our parents selling the house, about the apartment with thin walls, about the screaming matches that ended a 30-year marriage, about our father moving across the country and becoming a stranger, about our mother collapsing into a depression so deep she almost did not survive it, about 6 years of working until my body broke just to keep us afloat. I told him all of it, every single detail, and I watched his face change as the weight of his choices finally landed on his shoulders. He tried to apologize. He said he had no other option. He said those people would have killed him. I shook my head. "You had options," I said. "You could have faced it. You could have asked for help. You could have let us know you were in trouble before it was too late. But you chose to run. You chose to let us grieve. You chose to let Mom cry herself to sleep every night for a year straight. You chose to destroy our family and walk away clean." Derek reached for me. His hand touched my shoulder. I stepped back. "You want to start over," I said. "Start over from what there is nothing left. You burned it all down when you burned that car." He started to argue. He started to explain again. I cut him off. Derek died 4 years ago. I buried him. I mourned him. I made my peace with losing him. And then I spent 6 years building something from the ashes he left behind. I'm not going to let you walk back into my life and tear it down again. His face crumpled. For a moment he looked like the older brother I remembered, the one who protected me from bullies, the one who taught me to ride a bike. But that brother was gone. This man was a stranger who wore his face. I said goodbye. I turned around. I walked back toward the stadium where my mother was waiting. Derek called my name. Once. Twice. 3 times. I did not look back. I did not tell my mother what happened that day. She was finally healing. She had rebuilt her life piece by piece over those 4 years. She smiled again. She laughed again. She had returned to work part-time at a small medical clinic and found purpose in helping others. I could not destroy that. I could not hand her the knowledge that Derek was alive, that he had chosen to let her believe he was dead, that her years of grief had been based on a lie. That truth would break her in ways she might never recover from. So I kept it to myself. It was the heaviest secret I have ever carried. The weeks after graduation were difficult. I started my first real job at a small accounting firm in downtown Columbus. The work was steady, the pay was decent, and for the first time in 6 years I only had one thing to focus on each day. But at night I could not sleep. I replayed that parking lot conversation over and over. I questioned my decision. Was I too harsh? Should I have given Derek a chance? Did I have the right to speak for our mother, to decide what she could and could not know? I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Warren, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes who listened without judgment. In her office, I finally said out loud everything I had been holding inside. She taught me something that changed the way I thought about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not something you owe anyone, she said. It is a choice you make for yourself if and when you are ready. And choosing not to forgive does not make you a bad person. It makes you someone who is protecting their own peace. I was not ready to forgive Derek. Maybe I never would be. But I learned to let go of the anger that was eating me alive. I could not control what he did. I could not change the past. All I could do was move forward and build the life I wanted. Slowly, I started to heal. I made friends at work. Real friends, not just acquaintances I nodded to in passing. We went out for drinks on Friday nights. We watched football games on Sundays. We talked about our lives, our dreams, our frustrations with demanding clients. I started cooking dinner for my mother every Sunday. We would sit at her small dining table and talk for hours about everything and nothing. She told me stories about her childhood that I had never heard before. She asked about my job and actually remembered the names of my co-workers. She was present again, fully present in a way she had not been since Derek died. I even started dating. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and casual dinners. But it felt good to imagine a future that included more than just survival. One evening, about 8 months after graduation, I was walking home from work when I passed a park where children were learning to ride bicycles. I stopped and watched a father running beside his daughter, his hand on the back of her seat, encouraging her to keep pedaling. I thought about Derek, about those Saturday afternoons in our driveway when he did the same thing for me. I thought about the brother I loved and the stranger he became, and I realized something important. Family is not just blood. Family is the people who show up when everything falls apart. Derek shared my blood, but he chose to disappear when our family needed him most. My mother, despite her own pain, never left. She fought through depression that could have killed her because she knew I needed her to survive. That is what family means. Not obligation, not genetics, presence. I do not know where Derek is now. I do not know if he stayed in Columbus or went back to Portland or moved somewhere else entirely. Honestly, I do not want to know. He made his choices. I made mine. Sometimes I wonder if I will regret my decision someday. Maybe when I am older, maybe when my mother is gone, maybe when I have children of my own who ask about their uncle. Maybe then I will wish I had handled things differently. But today, right now, I am at peace. I built a life from the ruins Derek left behind. I took care of the people who actually needed me. I kept my promise to a grave that turned out to be empty. My brother died 4 years ago. In every way that matters, he is still dead. And I have learned how to live without him. That is the lesson he taught me, even though he never meant to. Sometimes the people you love the most will hurt you the deepest. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can let that pain define you, or you can use it to build something stronger. I chose to build. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to close a door on someone you loved, not because you stopped caring, but because keeping that door open would have destroyed you? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched you in some way, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you have not subscribed yet, consider joining this community. I share stories like this one because I believe we heal by knowing we are not alone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Whatever you are going through right now, I hope you find the strength to keep building, even when everything around you is falling apart. Take care of yourselves, and take care of the people who actually show up for you.